This is Kimberly Rice, and you are tuned into the Secret Sauce Marketing Tasting Show, the groundbreaking podcast for business bosses, professional women, and anyone who is hungry to learn how to create the career, business, and life of their dreams by charting their own course. Good morning, Mark. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Kimberly, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. We are live with our next episode. We are so excited to welcome our good friend Mark Tarasiewicz to our podcast this morning. So hello, good morning. Did you think we were going to have snow yesterday?
I most certainly did, and I was one of the few people, I think, who live in the city of Philadelphia who really truly believed that we were going to get clobbered, and I think we did.
It was a little crazy. I just escaped Manhattan in the nick of time. I literally did all of my transfers, getting out of Manhattan and back down to South Jersey, just as it was really kind of getting a little slick. So I'm very grateful to have gotten off the road, but so many of our fellow citizens did not. I read last night where there were over 400 accidents yesterday in New Jersey alone.
Yeah, it was a terrible situation, and I was very upset to hear that there were so many accidents around the Delaware Valley, and New York was especially badly hit, I understand.
Yes. You would not have wanted to be on the GW Bridge yesterday.
No.
I think I read there was a 10-hour delay.
Oh my goodness.
I hope they just packed a bottle of bourbon in there. Oh my gosh. So for those who are not in the Northeast, I think we were not expecting the snow, or at least the amount of snow. In my view, the meteorologist let us down yesterday. I don't think that they anticipated that we were going to get inches of snow rather than maybe a dusting of snow. But we're tough, we're resilient. So hopefully most of us found ourselves safe. So I want to introduce Mark to our listeners. I've known Mark for about a decade, and in the legal services world, where he has been such a leader in leadership and administration. So in his position currently, Mark serves as the executive director of administration for the Philadelphia-based law firm of Spector, Gadden, and Rosen, a long time, deeply steeped with reputation and wonderful services and people here in the city of Philadelphia and beyond. In his position, Mark directs strategic communications, marketing, and human resources for one of the nation's top-ranked full-service law firms. Previous to this position, Mark served as executive director of the 12,000-member Philadelphia Bar Association, the oldest association of lawyers in the United States. Such a rich history it has. And during his tenure as executive director, he made significant contributions to the association's success, directing an award-winning external-internal communications program, and negotiating sponsorship agreements in several millions of dollars, and so many more. He was such a viable, energetic, vibrant leader, really kind of came in and breathed a wonderful breath of fresh air to our wonderful Philadelphia Bar Association. And, Mark would not really tout this, but he's a 3-time recipient of the Luminary Award presented by the ABA's National Association of Bar Executives. And then just last year, Mark was recognized by the Philadelphia Bar Association for his excellent in Bar Association executive leadership. So, folks, today we were speaking with someone who has been through the fire. You don't get to be that level of leader without having gone through the fire and lived to tell about it, I would say. And so this morning, we're so delighted and privileged to speak with Mark about basically legal services leadership, and his role over all these years. He had some private law firm experience before he went into more of the public sector, and now has returned to private sector. So it's so great to chat with you today, Mark.
Thank you, Kimberly. And that's really a generous introduction. I truly appreciate that. And it is a pleasure to be on with you today.
So let's start with you sharing with our listeners a bit about yourself, your personal, or I'm sorry, your professional passion, and a few insights into your professional journey.
Certainly. So I consider myself a tried and true public relations professional, particularly in the legal field, as you'd mentioned. And 23 years of nonprofit administration experience on top of that. So I'm really always looking to bring that sort of PR and interpersonal relations element into all of my relationships, professionally and personally, only because public relations really at its heart is doing good things and telling people that you did them. It's very, very simple, actually. And in our daily lives, I personally feel that giving back and service, a service ethic, is essential to a well-rounded professional and a well-rounded person. And I was really quite honored to be with the Philadelphia Bar Association for over 20 years. Only because I think at its essence, the Philadelphia Bar Association stood for access to justice and service to the public and the profession. And so it was truly an honor to be executive director of that organization. And, taking that mindset and taking that toolkit into the private sector, working currently for a law firm that is also steeped in legal tradition, one of the most venerable law firms in the city of Philadelphia, that also embraces many of those same ethics. So for me, I've been very fortunate and very lucky in my career to be able to bridge that public relations ethic in terms of service and quality of legal representation, to not only in the nonprofit sector but also in the for-profit.
Great. Well, you do have such extensive experience in PR, public relations. You've probably held every award that the professional, let's see, what is it, Public Relations Society. What's the PP? Is it PPRA?
Yes, it's
PSRA?
Philadelphia Public Relations Association. So PPRA, yes,
PPRA.
that's the one.
Gotcha. So I'm curious what your view is with PR and its relevance in the internet age, where now we can all push out our own content, and some businesses, organizations may rely less on PR professionals like ourselves because there's so much more access. I'm curious in your view.
It's a very good question, Kimberly. And, it's interesting. As we talked about, PR is a study in relationships and relationship building. But also, PR is really making that invaluable human connection, both with colleagues and clients and those that we serve on a daily basis, but also with the general public. And I think the digital age has certainly made that easier in many respects, but also in some respects more challenging. And I say that because we do have such a proliferation of internet vehicles and social media channels that we can use to get our messages out. That entire milieu has also been layered with a whole new population of what I like to call citizen journalists. And it's the folks out there who are making their own news content and posting it, and really requiring many of us to separate the wheat from the chaff, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, we hear so much in the headlines about fake news. And there is truth to that, and not just in the political sphere, but, I think really about how folks are parsing and digesting their news. And of course, let's not forget a whole new generation of young folks who are really getting their news from what many of us who have been, around the block a few times consider non-traditional sources of news, and that would be Twitter, as opposed to turning on your local network affiliate and watching the evening news. So
Mm-hmm.
there's been a paradigm shift for sure.
It's fascinating that for those folks who have, they don't know life without the internet, which is, I mean, it really has only, I think it was in the mid 90s where it was really gaining force. And that's not that long ago.
That is true.
Yeah, for those of us, like you said, who's been around the track a couple times, 20 years is not that long ago. And every night I remember we would sit down at 6 o'clock and watch Walter Cronkite. you know um,
Absolutely.
that was the day. I mean, and then that was the news. This is the way it is. And now it's like, oh my god, the information overload, and what do you believe and what you not believe. But it's just an interesting, like as you said, it's an interesting paradigm. And I think that for us as PR professionals, it gives us a greater challenge and responsibility to cut through a lot of the noise.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So I'm just curious from the PR perspective and all of your vast experience, what do you see most professionals slash maybe at lawyers or others that you run into in your professional sphere? What do you feel like they struggle most with PR?
At the end of the day, I think that there is a lot of competition. And there's competition in terms of the noise that we were just talking about. But I also think that one of the main struggles of a PR professional these days is really trying to create a level of trust with the news media, with clients, so that it's understood that you as a public relations executive or coordinator, no matter what your level is, you are trying to improve upon and better their image, their reputation, and also to guide them and kind of lead them down the path of professional acumen in terms of making sure they're advancing themselves, putting their best foot forward. And truly, there are folks out there, I think, in public relations who do feel that it doesn't take a lot to become a PR person, that anyone can sort of hang out a shingle and do PR. And it really isn't like that. There's a strategic communications element to it. There are some very, very delicate and sensitive areas in terms of corporate messaging. And let's not forget about crisis communication. My goodness, we live in a society where there seems to be any number of PR crises from companies and product liability to celebrity scandal. We are a nation of daily crises. And so you really need a true pro to navigate that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, sometimes doesn't it make our skin cringe when we see crises that may land on the front page of, LinkedIn, not LinkedIn necessarily, but Twitter for sure, or our news browser, trending news and all of this unnecessary drama. If people would have, gotten in front of an issue and just had trained professionals to lead them along their way versus trying to bumble through it, and either they're losing jobs, losing reputations, losing substantial dollars, etc., because it's certainly not as easy as one might think.
Absolutely. That's correct.
So I want to ask you a couple questions about your long tenure at the bar, an organization that we both love, and it's grown so much over the year. And when you were there for so many years, yeah, it was constantly evolving. I saw it with my own eyes from the outside, but I'm just curious, in your experience, what impressed you? With the organization, and you saw it from many different levels and different many perspectives that mostly operates with volunteers as far as in leadership outside of the executive director position that you held, with leadership that actually is changing on a regular basis given the term limits.
Yeah, and that is a unique model. I have to agree. And in the world of associations, it takes a particularly adept professional, I think, to be able to navigate that entire sort of structure of a 501c6 nonprofit association, because you do constantly have new board members, and we had over 50. That's quite a
Mm,
large board.
mm-hmm.
And so a lot of personalities, a lot of backgrounds, and hailing from, all positions of authority and, and quite frankly, power within the Philadelphia legal community, which is among, if not the most prestigious legal community in the nation. So, we're talking about some high level folks. And you're right, because the cycling of new leaders on an annual basis means that you're always sort of reinventing yourself. And, you're looking to try to create some continuity between leaders from year to year to year,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a challenge. We used to have an expression called NIMY, NIMY, not in my year, and that would be, your typical organization leader. And it just doesn't just have to be a bar association leader, but really any professional organization that has that sort of structure where you have an annual president who comes in for a 1-year term and has their particular projects and, maybe their own agenda. And then by the end of the year, you're already preparing for the next person to come on the stage. And there's always a unique sort of framework to this, because you have individual projects that don't always see the light of day the next year. And so this is a challenge, I have to say.
Wow. So I can only imagine how nimble an organization under the paid leadership, like such as yourself in the executive director role, had to be in commanding, your ship, which was stable with the constant flow of the term limited leadership, or the leadership.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, I have to say, though, at the end of the day, it's a lot of this was gravy to the fact that working for an organization and getting the privilege of working for an organization that had at its, heart, a good government mentality and a desire to, instruct and demystify the law for the general public, and also to help, I'd say probably assist, but also really change the lives of disadvantaged populations in the city who could not afford legal services,
Mm-hmm.
and came to an organization like the Bar Association, who could help provide free, no cost legal services to the indigent and folks that were just facing everyday human crisis issues. So I took a lot of pride in that.
Wonderful. You did a fabulous, fabulous job. Um, so let's talk about leadership for a minute. So we know nonprofit leadership and legal services leadership in the context of the private law firm, and in the community, because at Spector Gaddon, you have a lot of law firm leaders. They've been tried and true, Mr. Rosen, Mr. Epstein, so many others in your firm have had tremendously distinguished careers, and are really held to that standard of others that come behind them, of meeting those standards. So I'm curious, from your unique point of view, what do you see as one of the most important things that the law firm leaders grapple with in this constantly changing legal services dynamic?
It's a great question, Kimberly. And I think, like any other business, the law struggles in terms of providing services that are distinctive. And, everyone wants to separate themselves from the pack. Everyone wants to have a unique element of service that their competitors don't have, that they can, truly wear on their sleeve and say, we are not only proficient, but we excel at, a certain type of law or a certain way of practicing. And, for our at Spector, Gaddon, and Rosen, I think one of the things that distinguishes us, quite frankly, is, as you said, we have some legal trailblazers and true icons of the Philadelphia legal market at our firm. So we're quite honored in that respect. But also, we're sort of known as bringing creativity to our representation.
Hmm.
We have unique courtroom strategies, things that are not out of the box, but things that are very, very tailored and customized in terms of strategy, so that we're not just giving a cookie cutter defense or a cookie cutter representation. We are, quite frankly, giving a very, very uh, creative, nuanced strategy that maybe no one else thought of, and it does tend to carry the day. We've had a lot of success with, with the creative minds that we have here representing, the folks that we have as our clients.
Yes, indeed. And I'm just curious, it's interesting in our time that we've been in legal services, we have witnessed some greats, not only great legal minds, but those folks who have risen to prominent recognition within the legal and business communities, and are really just larger than life figures that have led the community, who are pillars of the business community. But now they're reaching the fall, maybe even the winters of their careers. And, the next generation of leaders are, ready and eager to come up. I'm just curious from your unique perspective, what is the imperative that law firms need to embrace in developing the next generation of leaders?
Oh, that's such an important topic. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think there are many imperatives. Um, One of the things I've noticed, and coming from a bar association environment, certainly this was part of our toolkit on a daily basis, was just creating mentorship opportunities from, let's call it, older generation
Hmm.
of attorneys
Hmm.
to, a much younger generation of attorneys that is not coming out in large numbers. We see some trends that are concerning in the legal profession, at least in the Northeast part of the United States, where law school admissions are down. And law schools, even some of the most prestigious ones, are facing some, struggles with regard to student enrollment. And, they say these trends ebb and flow, but for right now, with law schools graduating less students, students are hungry for jobs, and jobs are hard to find. At least the jobs in the legal market, where they want to start and maintain a successful and prosperous career. And so when young attorneys come into a firm, and I know our firm is a good example, you have young associates who are very interested in uh, getting feedback. Millennials, dare we say, they crave feedback. It's a
Right.
generational thing. And so it's very hard for a young attorney to be thrust into a competitive legal environment or the world of, big law firms, and not have that one or two people that can guide them and provide, daily feedback and daily mentorship. If they lack that, they will struggle. And it's a challenge.
Yes, it is a challenge. With your broad oversight at the Philadelphia bar, what was your impression of whether or not and to what extent law firms are really embracing mentoring or training or preparing and equipping their new lawyers?
They have been very slow to the take.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it's been tough. Mentorship programs, unless they're fully resourced, they tend to wither on the vine.
Yes.
It's so important to have a structure that has leadership that can carry the ball. And that means having regular dialogue with everyone on your mentorship list or network, so that you're constantly checking in on the relationships to make sure that your folks are connecting with each other. It's a lot of maintenance.
So I'm just curious, because things are constantly changing. And, with the technology, the expectations, there's never been more dialogue on, my life work balance, which a lot of folks take exception with even that term. We see very troubling rising mental health issues in the legal profession. Given the work demands, the level of stress and anxiety, it's very, very troubling. But I'm just curious from your perspective, how do you see the legal services world evolving? And I mean, obviously, it's one of the oldest professions in our, I guess, business world. We've always had lawyers from very long time ago, but it has changed. And from my, I don't see that there's sometimes law firm leaders that are embracing those changes. I'm just curious in your perspective.
There is a lot of controversy, I think, within the legal services community, uh, just generally about the advent of do-it-yourself internet legal services. And I think about companies like Avo. Um, I think about companies like um, LegalZoom, and there are so many. There's such a proliferation of internet-based do-it-yourself legal websites and legal website toolkits that are concerning, I think, to practitioners who are the ones who draft rules of professional conduct, who work with the ABA on ethical standards that ensure the quality of legal services that's provided to the general public, that it meets very stringent standards. And so when you have someone going to a website to do a do-it-yourself will for $99, are they truly getting all of the legal protections that they need to be getting?
Mm-hmm.
And are they truly getting the quality of the product and something that's resilient and something that will protect them?
Mm-hmm.
And so we are concerned as a legal profession. I know there's certainly concern at the ABA level, and this has been a topic of conversation that has been very, very controversial and continues to be discussed. It's a tough one.
It is. It is a tough one. I was just given a CLE the other night up in Manhattan to a bunch of attorneys on the ethics of networking, and all the things that go into the rules for professional conduct that each attorney is held account to. But I would say 90% of my lawyer audiences don't even know or not cognizant of the actual rules for which they're held account. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
And I often think, and I just saw something yesterday that came out from the ABA. I believe it was from the ABA about the relaxing of some of the verbiage choices that lawyers now can use. But I felt all along that many of the rules for professional conduct, particularly as it relates to attorney advertising, was really designed to protect consumers and not the more sophisticated business leadership or business executive. And but we read every day where folks are taken advantage of. And off the top of my head, I can't think of a better example than the predatory lending practices of so many mortgage companies that led to the Great Recession back in 2007, 8, 9. That these folks were getting mortgages that had no business getting mortgages for the dollar figures that they did. And so there is tremendous merit in my view that we still have to hold to account and protect the Joe citizen, because if you don't have the exposure to the law, there's no reason that you should know. And if you can't trust a trained legal advisor who's taken an oath, that their reputation and careers on the line by taking an oath to follow those rules of professional conduct and be held to a higher standard, it's extraordinarily troubling, and it can just wreck people's lives.
Absolutely. And you cite a very, very important example, which is the predatory lending example. And you're right. I mean, that is something in and of itself that nearly crippled our country.
Oh,
And you don't think about the scope of these things because they tend to seem like backyard issues, but exponentially, my goodness. I mean, the national economy, it's interesting. I think about that quite a bit because in Philadelphia, for instance, a lot of the emphasis in the business sector is on the economic vitality of eds and meds. Education and medicine is
Right.
huge in
Right.
this area,
Yes.
but they often forget about the law. And I say to folks, with so many law firms of such global import in the Philadelphia market, these are law firms that happen to be based in Philadelphia, but have offices around the world, 20, 25 offices around the globe. And we have so many of the firms in the United States that fit that profile, but many of them are here resident in Philadelphia. And I think about if those firms went away, it would completely deflate and decimate the economic base of the city of Philadelphia. The city would not be able to function.
Right.
So, I have tremendous respect for those that serve in this profession and protect the public in their service, because it is right up there with the medical profession, one of life's most essential services.
Absolutely, absolutely. Despite the fact that they get a bad rep, but
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
plenty of people. There's plenty of legal service providers that are so diligent and selflessly give every day. To protect those. And so I want to be respectful for our time, but I wanted to ask you one last question. Um, and this is kind of a fun question. If you could give your younger self one piece of professional advice, what would it be?
That is a very good question, and I think, and and it's probably one that catches people off guard. But I actually do have a top of mind answer for that,
Awesome.
and that is to relax,
Oh,
because I do think that when you come into a career that ends up to be, your life's calling, you're always looking over your shoulder at, okay, am I doing it correctly? Am I serving the people that I need to serve in a way that will give me distinction and build my reputation? And we're always overthinking and rethinking ourselves. And sometimes I think if we just bring some humanity and, dare I say, some levity into our professional selves, our professional personas, it's amazing how those good channels of energy flow when we just don't take ourselves too seriously.
that is fabulous. Fabulous response. Thank you for that. And I couldn't agree more. When we look to our left and we look to our right, and everything is tightrope every day, every minute of every day, um, I think that we just need to breathe.
That's right.
Just breathe it. People.
Exactly.
Anyway, is there anything that you would like to share? I mean, you bring all this tremendous experience. You're such a wonderful fella out and about in the community. And I just want to give you a platform to our leader of our listeners that you would like to offer.
Oh, I appreciate that. I know you personally, Kimberly, as a maven of popular culture. I know you're very well plugged into what's happening in your community, what's happening in terms of lifestyle, because I think you and I probably agree on the same concept of, being a student of popular culture
Hmm.
and really knowing not only, the things to see culturally in terms of the arts and in terms of sports and things that we need to be in tune as a society, but also being able to make good, really, kind of solid recommendations to friends and clients about things that they might be missing, that they should be enjoying. And so I live in a big city. There's constantly, a new restaurant. There's constantly a new arts production. And I really enjoy not only attending and supporting that, but also recommending it. And people really appreciate that. People love people who are creative types. And so I would say I gravitate to other creative people. I think they add such a lovely dimension to our lives. And so all my friends are creative. And I say, be your best creative self at all times. I really truly feel that.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's so fabulous. And yes, I agree with you. We're on this absolutely same wavelength, which is why we probably get along so well and enjoy each other's company. But thank you again, taking so much time out of your busy day. We greatly appreciate it. And just share with our listeners how they can connect with you, your choice of your preference of connection.
Absolutely. I love Twitter, and I could be easily reached at my name on Twitter, which is at Mark Tarasiewicz, Mark, and last name Tarasiewicz, as in cat, Z as in zebra.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mark. Again, well, this has been such fun. Bantering with you on the podcast here, and for our listeners, join us on a regular basis. You can find our podcast on all the top podcast platforms, from Spotify to Apple, to just put us in and you'll find us. And we're always very focused on providing leadership and folks of interest with expert insight from our recognized experts in the field of leadership, communication strategy, so much more. And again, Mark, thank you so much for your time. And listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Kimberly.
All right. Take care.